Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Sportsbook Confidential. My name is John Sullivan, and I'm coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in Seneca Falls, New York. And this little show here is to help you learn and grow as a sports bettor. Got an interesting show for you today. There's so many sports going on right now. We've got, of course, the NFL, college football, and we got the CFL Playoffs. Hockey is going on, pro basketball, and now college basketball is going on. And those of you local to us, I'm sure you saw that Syracuse performance on Wednesday night, and I think I had a CYO team that scored more points than that. But we're going to talk college basketball today in our sportsbook lesson, how to develop a college basketball model, things to consider. And if you're not a big math person, I have a method for you that may help you if you want to handicap some college basketball games. So we'll talk about that. And then we've got some big matchups in college football. And we have NFL Week 10 and the CFL Playoffs. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But before we do any of those things, we're going to do what we always do and update my bankroll. And I did not have a great week. A lot of close calls. Starting bankroll, $535. And we had Florida playing Georgia. And we had Florida plus 6.5, and they lost by 7. So that's minus $18 to the bankroll. And then we had Florida Atlantic plus 1 at Western Kentucky. That game was not much of a sweat at all, and that was plus $18 to the bankroll. Then we had the Oregon USC under, and in the second quarter, with about 2.5 minutes left in the first half, they scored 4 touchdowns. Each team scored 2 touchdowns, including a kickoff return at the end of the first half. And it's one of those things that just, I still only lost the under by about 7 points, but you knew it was toast at that point. You just move on to the next one. Packers minus 3.5 against the Chargers. That was a loss, minus $18. A lot of people I respect in the betting community were on the Packers, including myself. They did not show up. And then the Broncos plus 3.5 at home against the Browns. That was a win. They won that game outright. Plus $17 to the bankroll, as I predicted. The Broncos' replacement quarterback would do at least as well as Joe Flacco was doing. And then we had the Raiders-Lions under, and again, we just missed this one with a score very late in the game, minus $18 to the bankroll. I have not done well with unders at all in this football season. I don't know why. Maybe my model needs adjustment, but it's been a lot of close calls. So if you do the math, that's a loss of $37 on the week. So that brings our bankroll back down below 500 to 498. And dividing by 30, as we always do, because we want to remain selective, sports bettors, we're going to come up with a bet size of $17 going forward for this week. So a step back. We're going to just keep grinding. There will be lots of hockey and basketball for us to play over the winter months, as well as playoff football. So it'll be very exciting. And hopefully we'll go up as we go forward. So let's move on to college basketball models. Now, I've done an episode on ingredients to consider in building a model, which was just general, not specific to any sport. And I've also done an episode on ingredients of a football model, specific to football. And college basketball is a unique situation, and there's some things I want to talk about here. First of all, there are over 350 Division I teams. Personally, for me, my recommendation is if you're going to play college basketball and you're not a computer whiz, I would try to stick to 1 or 2 conferences, and you should be able to find some value. I would argue even some of the lesser-known conferences, like the Big Sky or the Ivy League, smaller conferences that don't get a lot of attention, the lines may be a little bit softer. But it's very difficult to handicap, 100+ college basketball games on a given Saturday or Sunday or whatever day of the week. You need to have, a team of data scientists to stay on top of that. Or just be a lot smarter than me. There is tremendous amounts of data available. There's a lot of websites dedicated to college basketball. Ken Pom comes to mind, Ken Pomeroy. There's lots of places to look. So you can see what data is available to you and then maybe decide how you want to examine that data or pump it in a spreadsheet or whatever. So with any model, this is something that I try to impart to people, whether you're really strong at math or not. Strive to balance the accuracy of the model with the time invested. There's somebody that's super mathematically talented and can come up with a very accurate model using, developing their own algorithms, obviously customized spreadsheets, whatever. They may be able to do it in a fairly reasonable amount of time, but they're still spending hours probably on that model. And my suggestion is I would rather have a model that's almost as accurate or somewhat accurate to that super duper model, but only spend an hour on it. If I could spend, within less than an hour or up to an hour, putting in, data for all the college basketball games tonight. And I think there's like 50 college basketball games tonight. But if I was, to pump in a bunch of numbers by hand on a spreadsheet, that's going to take me a long time. And, you either need to automate the process or streamline the process to do a simple, simpler model that will get you close to the result that you really, really desire, that the high level of accuracy. So you want maybe, not a medium to high level of accuracy, but way less time invested. So you need to figure out that balance. It's up to each individual person to figure out how that plays out for them. And then if you're not math-oriented, make a handicapping checklist. So this is how, if you're not into math or spreadsheets, you're still going to have to look at numbers. But if you can tell which number is better than the other, you can just make a checklist and go through all the ingredients of, that we would use to make a model, and you can checklist this team is better at this team is better at this, and come up with a strength of which team you think is better, or which team will, what kind of points they're going to score if you're playing over under, the total. But you can figure out a way that works for you. It's different for every person. And if you can come up with a good handicapping method, that's going to help you become a better sports bettor. That's all I'm trying to say, really. So let's talk about some specific ingredients to college basketball. And I have a bunch of stuff listed here, and I'm just going to go through them and talk about things I consider when I look at these stats. So college basketball, to me, number one is free throw percentage, and I have and frequency there. So teams that make their free throws, those are the teams that cover. If a spread on a game is -5 or whatever, any number, if the team that's the favorite is ahead, they're going to be fouled and they're going to shoot free throws. So you want a good free throw shooting team, and you think that they would be more likely to cover based on the fact that they're good at free throws. Now, also you have free throw frequency. And there's a couple of different things to consider when you talk about free throw frequency. How often they get to the line. That actually can affect a total. Teams that shoot lots of free throws, obviously the clock is stopped while free throws are being shot. So that would lean towards an over if they're good free throw shooters. If they're 50% free throw shooters, well, it doesn't really affect the total all that much as far as the flow of the game goes. And then you have shooting percentage, and that's, all baskets. It's not just 3 points. And a high-level shooting percentage team, for the most part, probably has a good inside game. They're shooting a lot of closer shots. You can, if you want to visualize, you can look at a shot distribution chart. I'm sure there's got to be somewhere out there that has that information, and you can see where the teams shoot most of their attempts from. And then here's something we've talked about before is points per possession, and that is directly related to the efficiency of the offense. You can figure out, you can do a quick calculation with points per possession, figure out how many average possessions a game each team has, kind of do a little quick math and figure out what you think a prospective total should be. And if you do that calculation before you look at the lines at the sports book, and then you'll say, well, this line is not anywhere near what I thought it was going to be. And then those are the types of instances where you're going to examine the game a lot closer and see if there's any value for you in the wager. 3-point field goal percentage and frequency. And this is interesting because this year the 3-point line has been pushed back to the international distance, 21.9, I think, or 22 even. I'm not exactly sure what it is. But once again, you have how good they are at shooting from the outside and frequency. What percentage of their shots are 3-point shots? And that, again, will affect the total. If a team is a good 3-point shooting team and they shoot a lot of 3-pointers, that's going to lean towards the over and vice versa. So something, again, to consider. And then moving on to rebounding and rebounding margin. Now, if you're a team is a very good rebounding team that gets lots of rebounds, that could also indicate that they are a poor shooting team. If they have a super high amount of offensive rebounds, yes, that means they're missing shots. If they have substantially more defensive rebounds than offensive rebounds, well, maybe that means they're a good shooting team. You have to put it into the context of the other numbers, but that's just something to consider. Now, rebound margin, if a team has a solid rebound margin over a large sample size of games, that means that they're very good, obviously rebounding team, but they are probably going to have more possessions than their opponents. So, again, that ties into the shooting, and you put those numbers together, you look at them, and you say, again, a checklist, and you see which side presents a stronger case for the game. Turnovers, assists, and ratio. Of course, turnovers. Now, there are unforced turnovers. A travel, an out-of-bounds turnover. And then there's forced turnovers or what I would, very good plays, like shots blocked and then possession goes to the other team. Just amazing steals. So, you have to – a team that has low turnovers is probably more likely to – if they have lower turnovers, they're more – likely to only lose the ball on exceptional plays by the defense. That's what I was trying to say. So, and then assists and ratio. So assists, obviously the number of assists per game, and then the ratio assists to turnovers. The higher that is, the better passing team is. The better passing of a passing game the team has. So that is something that can be considered if you're playing an up-tempo game. It could factor in a half-court game as well, but that's a skill that is not necessarily represented in just the scoring of the game, and but one team could be significantly better than the other. Rotation depth and fouls per game. This is something a lot of people don't talk about, but it's very important in college. You need to figure out, you can look at the minutes played and you can figure out what the rotation is like for each team. when I say rotation, it's the number of players each team plays in a given game. Usually, on average, it's going to be the same, unless it's a blowout and they put the bench in. But some teams will run 7 players with regularity. Some teams will run 10 players with regularity. And fouls per game is another, and that's fouls committed. So if a team uses a 7-man rotation and has 30 fouls a game, and another team has a 10-man rotation and commits 30 fouls a game, well, the team that has the 7-man rotation is going to be in foul trouble, and then their lower players have to come in, and the quality of their team will diminish. So that is something that you need to consider when handicapping college basketball. Some players are put in specifically just to foul, but they usually don't. They usually don't get significant minutes. So then we have scoring margin versus opponent, and this again can be really affected by the quality of the opponent. But a team that has a high scoring margin, that means they have depth. That means that they usually like to play up tempo, because a team that plays a half court game is not going to have a large scoring margin, even if they're beating their opponent handily. 15 points is a lot of points for a team that plays a very deliberate game, where 30 points is a team that plays fast break basketball. But it's something to consider. It can help you figure out what style of game these teams like to play, and figure out how long a team will keep their starters in, if it's going to be one of those games where it's a really strong team versus a really weak team. And then scoring variance, and this is something that is a little more like reading tea leaves, I guess. But scoring variance is a team that can score a really high amount of points, and it's basically the best a team has done is scoring points, and the worst a team has done scoring points. Great example is Syracuse the other night. They only scored 34 points in the game. I would not be surprised if that was their low total on the season. But a team that has a very low scoring variance, a very low ceiling, and a very high floor, so they might be 80 points and 63 points, and they're this close together, as opposed to 34 points and 97 points. A team that has that low variance, which means they're going to be very consistent. You can anticipate them likely putting in a specific range of points if you're betting an over/under. And then teams that have high scoring variance means that they have play different styles of basketball for different opponents. They're not trying to force that same style of basketball down the throats of their opponents. That's what Virginia likes to do. Virginia likes to play deliberate offense, strong defense, and force that style of basketball. And Syracuse did not try to run. It blew my mind that Boeheim basically treated that game like a practice. And but something to consider: scoring variance. Can the team, put up a lot of points, even though they only average 55? Can they put up 90? That type of thing. So that's a lot of stuff to consider. But it'll give you some ideas of things that you want to look at if you're going to build a college basketball model, or you're just going to handicap college basketball games. College basketball is a great sport to bet on, because the games, if there's no overtime, the games are over in 2 hours. And you can go out to the sports book in an afternoon or an evening and, sit there and say, hey, I'm going to bet 2 college basketball games, and you're going to get to watch them and be in and out of there in 2 to 3 hours, assuming 2 games are going on at the same time. So, and it's a lot of fun. It's very exciting. So hopefully you found that interesting, and we'll have another sportsbook lesson for you next time. But we're going to move on to football now, and let's start with NCAA football Saturday. So this week I did not pick a whole bunch of games. I picked the 8 games I thought were the most important for the season of college football. And here we go. And for those of you that don't watch the show regularly, the numbers in parentheses are my model, what my model predicts the outcome will be versus what the sportsbook line is there. I'm going to start with Baylor, undefeated Baylor at TCU. TCU 2.5 dog, 48 is the total. I have it at 2.97 and 49.30, so that leans slightly over. TCU has quarterback problems. They've had injuries and red shirts and transfers, and I'm not sure what type of performance they're going to put up this weekend, but Big 12 games are usually pretty close. So Baylor's had a 3-point game not too long ago, so I don't know what to think of that. Undefeated Penn State at undefeated Minnesota. Minnesota, the Gophers, a 6.5-point dog. 48 is the total. I have it at 6.18 and 47.39. It's basically right on. I feel like if this game gets over 7 to 7.5, I would take Minnesota. Penn State has had stiffer challenges than Minnesota has. But Minnesota has, they've taken care of business. They've defeated all the opponents that were put in front of them, and I feel like that this will be this is Big Ten power football. It'll be a good game. Iowa State at Oklahoma. Oklahoma minus 15, 69 is a very nice total there. Minus 12.13 and 67.68. So my model leans towards taking Iowa State. Oklahoma may have a lot less to play for than they did previously. There's always a chance that they could slip back into the college playoff mix, but I don't know. I don't feel strong enough. I always say that my model does not accurately reflect large spreads, so I'm a little gun shy here. But Iowa State is a good team. Wake Forest at Virginia Tech. Wake Forest 1.5 favorites, 61. I have Wake Forest as 2.36, and then I have 66.81. So Virginia Tech scored 20 on a very good Notre Dame defense. Wake Forest has a horrible defense. This game could be 35-31. I like the over here. Wake Forest is playing for a major bowl game. Very interesting, only one loss. And you never know, what can happen in the ACC title game. LSU at Alabama. This is the big one. These are two of the best three teams in the country. Alabama minus 5.5, 63, and I assume that this line means that Tua Tagovailoa is playing. I'm sorry if I butchered his name. Minus 4.28, 66.82. So my model says take LSU in the points and take the over. I think the over is in play here. Obviously, LSU is a pass-first team now as opposed to previous years. So you expect both of these teams to light it up. If the coaching is where it's at, they've prepared well, then maybe it'll be a little less. But my model doesn't really like it enough to go hog wild on the over, but it definitely leans over strongly. Kansas State at Texas. Texas minus 7, 58 is the total. Minus 4.1, 59.3. I'm really surprised by this line. Kansas State may not be a great road team, but 7 points is a lot. This team has proven itself to be competitive to all comers. So I really like the plus 7 here. The total's right on, so there's not a whole lot going there. So Iowa at Wisconsin, minus 9.5, 38.5. I have Wisconsin as 5.6-point favorites, 37.07. It's the offense for Wisconsin that's the question mark to me here. I feel like Iowa plus 9.5 is, that's a really juicy. At 10 points, I would probably take Iowa. If Wisconsin doesn't get their running game going, they didn't against Ohio State. They didn't get any passing going at all. It'll be interesting to see where this goes. My model says take the under, and I have a difficult time betting unders that low. So pass for me. And then two teams with surprisingly good records, Wyoming at Boise State. Boise State on the Smurf turf, minus 13.5, 48. I have it at a minus 11.33, 49.63. So that leans towards taking Wyoming. And it's one of those things where Boise State, they would kind of have to run up the score if they think they're playing for a playoff bid. With one loss, they're not going to get in. But they want that Mountain West title and a good bowl game. So that's all I got for college football today. So let's move right on to the pros. And we're going to look at the whole schedule for the pros. And there's 6 byes this week, so it's kind of a shorter schedule. Lions at the Bears, minus 3.5, 41.5. I have it at minus 2.48, 39-31. Bears have a very good defense, and Bears have a very bad offense. So, again, I feel like if that was over 42, I would probably take the under. Otherwise, I'm going to pass. Ravens at the Bengals, plus 10.5, 44.5. I have it at plus 9.81. 43.92. And the Bengals defense is okay. It's not great, but it's not the worst. But they're starting a new quarterback this week, and they're coming off a bye week. So I kind of like the 10.5 here. It leans over. I don't, it's one of those things where the Ravens will probably come back to earth a little bit after their big win at New England. Bills at the Browns. Browns minus 2.5, 40.5. The Bills actually have a good history going to Cleveland, but both of these teams have been bad for a lot of years. I have the Browns as 1-point favorites, 36.86, so that definitely leans under. And I just can't bring myself to bet that. The model says under. Maybe there'll be some bad weather that would help that, but if both of these teams put up 17, which is not hard to do, that's 34. So I don't know. That's a pass for me. Falcons at the Saints, minus 14, 51 is the total, minus 15.64, 55.48. So that definitely leans over. You're in a dome. Breeze is back. He got his feet wet last week. A lot of scoring is going to happen. I do like the over here. So my model likes it very much as well. And then we have the Giants at the Jets, Snoopy Bowl at MetLife Stadium. Jets 2.5 dogs, 44.5. I have the Giants as 2.06, 45-41. Boy, the Giants really screwed me on Monday night with that fumble at the end of the game. I lost my under. I feel like that there's going to be points scored in this game. I like the over here. It leans a little bit. I couldn't pick a side here, but I feel like the Jets need to put up points or their coaching staff's in trouble. Cardinals at the Bucks, minus 4.5, 52. I have it at minus 4.2, 49.96, so that leans under. Jameis Winston has just given up so many turnovers. It's hard to bet a Bucks under. I can't bring myself to do that here. So I'm going to pass on this game. Let's see what else we got in NFL. Excuse me. Chiefs at the Titans, plus 6.48. Mahomes is back. I have it at plus 5.63, 47-10. Leans over. If Tannehill plays, I like the Titans to score a little more points. It leans under. If Mariota plays, more ball control. Titans have a good defense. I don't know. I can't. You got to wait and see what happens. I think I'm going to pass on that one too. Dolphins at Colts, minus 12.5, 44, minus 12.24, 43.27. My model has that right on. It doesn't really seem to be any value there. Rams at Steelers. Steelers plus 3.5 at home, 43.5. Boy, you don't see the Steelers as home dogs very often. They were home dogs last week and they won. I have this game as a virtual coin flip and 45.95, so it leans to the over. It's tough not to take the Steelers plus 3.5 here, maybe even plus 4. It could get there. So Panthers at the Packers, minus 5.5, 46.5, minus 4.81, 47.74. You think the Packers would bounce back. I like a lot of points to be scored in this game. Obviously McCaffrey had a huge week last week. They're going to try to slow him down, but it would not surprise me if this was like a 35-28 game. Vikings at Cowboys on Sunday night. Cowboys minus 3.48. I have the Cowboys as 1.17 favorites. 45.73. So that leans under. And, Vikings have not been a great road team. They haven't. I would lean under here myself. I don't think I'm going to play that game, but we'll see what happens. And then the Seahawks and the 49ers on Monday night. 49ers -6, 47. My model has it as -8.44, 47.65. So my model leans strongly to the 49ers. And the Seahawks, I feel like, have played mostly an easy schedule. They've had a lot of good comebacks. But they go on the road here. They're playing on grass. We'll see what happens. My model leans strongly to the 49ers here, so I'm going to trust it. That may end up on my picks. So, and before we get to my picks, let's take a quick look at the CFL playoffs. We got the semifinals this week, the conference semifinals. We have the Eskimos at the Alouettes in Montreal. -2 and then 50. Trevor Harris is the quarterback. He's going to be back for the Eskimos. He's played most of his career in the Eastern Conference, so going to Montreal, not a big deal for him. I expect the Eskimos are going to give a very good game here. The Montreal Als are the Cinderella story of the season. They were 25-1 to win the Cup at the beginning. Their team's in receivership, but they've coalesced together. This is going to be a very good game. Don't really have a play on that one. I'm going to pass, but I lean towards the Eskimos. If I was getting 3 or more, I'd probably take the Eskimos. The West semifinal, the Blue Bombers at the Stampeders, -6 at home. 49.5 is the total. Zach Collaros is going to start for Winnipeg. Winnipeg's had quarterback problems all year. Matt Nichols is out for the year. Strevler has had trouble passing. And Collaros, who has concussion issues, he's one hit away from ending his football career. But when healthy, he is a decent quarterback. However, Calgary has the best quarterback in the league in Bo Levi-Mitchell. They're playing at home. They have a significant home field advantage. -6, I like this a lot. Both of these games, I would lean towards the over. These teams will try to extend the games, and they're going to try to earn points whenever possible, so they're going to be attempting field goals when they normally wouldn't. And I expect both of these games to compete for the overs, but it's been a low-scoring year in the CFL. The numbers have been less than usual, about a field goal less than what I expect. But in playoff games, it's a different story. So that's how I feel about the playoff games on Sunday. If you don't want to watch NFL, those are pretty exciting. So let's get to my picks as we wrap it up. I got Wake Virginia Tech over 61 at +103. Expect a lot of points there. Kansas State +7 at Texas, -104. Like them to cover. Falcons and Saints over 51, -108. Expect a lot of points there. Steelers, I'm going to take them at +4, -107. At +3.5, I think they were +103. And then on Monday night, 49ers -6 at -110. And then my bonus pick, the Stampeders in the CFL, -6 at -108. I feel like they will move on to the finals next week. So that's going to do it. Thanks for tuning in. Next week we'll have another lesson for you, some more sports to cover, a lot of handicapping, and all this general nonsense all over again. So thanks for tuning in, and have a good weekend, and we'll see you next time as I play the outro music for you. Take care, everybody.